Great. Well, I'm very lucky to be here with Graham, and the reason why I'm with Graham is because we're both involved in a play at Parish Players, which is showing between the 17th, the 18th and 19th of May. And Graham's involved. Well, you're not on the stage, are you, in this?
No, the project really was started by my daughter, Claire Quinn, and she's directing it. But she asked Carol, my wife, and I if we would help out. And we started off wanting or looking at plays. Parish Players have done a couple of First World War themed things before. We've done Journey's End twice. We've done Oh What a Lovely War once. And all the plays about the First World War, frankly, are all male cast.
Right.
And we wanted something that was had some female cast. So we looked around and frankly we just couldn't find anything. The Accrington Pals was something that we thought of.
All right.
But it's a slightly different take on the war, and it wasn't what we were looking for. Should we move on past the drilling?
Yes, there's some drilling going on in the background. Might have to edit that out. There's always drilling, isn't there? Everywhere you go, as well as the beautiful tranquil sounds of birdsong. Such a juxtaposition. So you're thinking of doing the Accrington Pals, but dismissed that idea.
Yeah, we didn't really like the theme of it. Wasn't what we were looking for. So we thought, well, let's create something for ourselves. So we found a couple of one-act plays, each running about 20 minutes, and we found a number of poems and readings of around the First World War, and we linked these together with some narrations that I've written and some songs of the period, and put together a show which we hope will last a couple of hours and be a rip-roaring success.
Yeah, so it's really your own creation, a compilation of different themed poems and plays, not differently themed, but they're all about the First World War. And I know this because I'm in it, aren't I, Graham?
You are indeed. You are our young officer off the day before he goes off to fight. And you have a very nice little play along with your father where we're looking at something to do with the relationship that existed in upper middle class families, the relationship between the men in the family, fathers and sons. There was not much hugging and kissing going on in those days, very stiffer upper lip, much to the chagrin of the mothers. And you and Richard explore that issue, I think, very well.
It's very funny, isn't it? It's by J.M. Barrie, and if I'm not mistaken, that's the same author of Peter Pan.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, it is. But it's a very different, very different piece.
Very different. I'm very excited about it.
and the other play we're doing is called Leaving Tommy, and is a rather tragic tale about a young man who's about to be shot for desertion because it is believed he left his friend Tommy to die and ran back to the trenches to seek shelter for himself. He contends, of course, he was going back to get help for Tommy, but it's hard to know from this distance of time. But it's again a rather poignant piece, and brilliantly portrayed by the characters who are in it, as everything is.
It is a brilliant show. We've done a few rehearsals now, and I can see it so entertaining. And there's lots of musical numbers in it as well. There's a lot of light and shade, more serious plays,
yep,
and also funny things as well. So there's a lot for everyone.
The whole gamut of emotions.
So, you've been involved with the Parish Players how long, Graham?
Oh, more years than I care to remember. I think about 1968-ish may have been my first introduction. And we're a family who has the distinction of having had 4 generations on the Parish Players stage. My mother was in one production many years ago that Carol directed. Carol and I have both been in it. All 3 of our children have been in it, 2 of them in this production, and our grandchildren have been in the pantomimes as well. So we have 4 generations.
And the Parish Players is still going strong, isn't it?
Started in 1956 to put on a pantomime. And for many, in fact, I think the following year they didn't put on a pantomime because it was thought it was just a one-off activity. Everyone was up in arms about it. They'd had so much fun. So they did another one in 58. And we've done a pantomime every January since then. How many years is that? 60 plus.
Well, a lot of years, a long time. But people can still join the parish players. It's not a closed shop. If you want to get to do some acting or some stage design or lighting, or there's lots of different crafts involved. But how do people get involved with the parish players?
Just pitch up on a Tuesday. Well, first of all, come and see the show, 17th, 18th, 19th of May. I'm sure we can get the box office details across to you. Come and see the show and just introduce yourself to anyone who looks as if they're at home there, and come along on a Tuesday night and just join in. And yes, as you say, not only people who want to be on stage, but people who want to help with lighting, sound, painting the scenery, set construction, the whole lot.
And if people do want to get those details, I'll be including the Parish Players website, which is parishplayers.net, on the Walking Pod website. And of course, if you're watching this video, then you'll already know about that. But if you're listening on the radio, it's www.walkingpod.com, and will take you to the parishplayers.net in case you can't remember or write it down. So, if you do join the parish players, you will be brought to this amazing, charming place, St Mary's, isn't it? That's the name of the church.
St Mary's Merton, yep, St Mary's Merton.
And most of the activities for the parish players take place in the church hall. There are occasional rehearsals that we do in the glebe fields at the back, if the weather is inviting. But you'll also see this amazing, it's the church cemetery, and
yep,
there's a reason we're here.
There are a number of reasons. Mainly, right at the minute, it's because we have 27 official war graves here, recognised by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. I'll pause us here just for a moment, because if we were to turn round, hang on, which way are we looking? We need to go right round, because
this is in selfie mode.
Because the gravestone that we're standing by now is John Innes.
Okay.
And those of you who do any gardening, let's turn around, will have heard of John Innes compost. And John Innes lived in Merton Park and is buried here. And Merton Park is very well known for its gardens and its connection with things gardening. So I thought I'd just stop here and share that with your viewers and listeners.
That's quite a famous one. There's some of the lights that the parish players have come from Merton Hall, which used to be a building.
Absolutely. So the connection is quite strong.
It's amazing.
But the other thing particularly we wanted to look at here is some of the war graves. As I say, we have 27. From memory, 14 of them are First War graves, 12 of them are Second War graves, and there is another one which perhaps we'll wander to now, and I'll tell you a little bit about the character there, because again there's a great local interest.
So many people died during the First World War. I think this would be a good place to stop and have a fascinating fact about the number of people, the sheer scale of the loss of life just in the First World War alone. Shall we do that?
Yes, if you know the answer.
We'll get Mickey to find it.
All right.
Okay, that's fine. We've done that now. You've got to imagine that's happened, Graham.
Right.
So we're heading towards the first one.
Captain Baggerly, and you may notice as you see this video that from time to time there are stones that have got this sort of poppy on it. Many of them are on a pole. Some of them have fallen back. But if we go round this side here, we can see the writing on this actually is not too bad. But Captain Baggerly, let me just tell you a little bit about him. He was killed in Dublin in November 1920. He lived at number 1 Dorset Road, which is a road just a few yards.
That's not far from here.
Yeah. And at the time he was killed, he was engaged to the daughter of the Reverend Jagger, who was the vicar of this parish. And indeed, it was Reverend Jagger who commemorated the war memorial, which perhaps we'll go and look at a little bit later on. And so the Reverend Jagger, who had anticipated conducting the marriage of Captain Baggerly to his own daughter, instead had to conduct the funeral service.
Oh no.
and so they're a well-known family in the area, but neither the First War nor the Second War. But
no relation to Mick Jagger.
Not so far as I'm aware. I never heard him sing.
Okay, that might have been a clue.
Yeah, it might have been, yes. So, nor did I see him dance, so I couldn't comment. Yeah, he's commemorated in the church. I have a feeling he died in about 1933. So I don't suppose I'll find out much more about Jagger.
If there's any connection, we'll try and find it. Let's move on. I think we need to get away from the angle grinder, from the works that are going on at the in the church. On the roof. Most
of the graves, or many of the war graves actually, are in a patch down here which we're going to go past. And I noticed Christine Crisp, one of our parishioners who sort of runs a group of people who try to look after the churchyard. She was here clearing up one of the graves. Do you want to have a word with Christine?
Let's do it. Yes, let's talk to her.
Let's do that.
It's lots of lovely bluebells and wildflowers.
Actually, this is cow's parsley, I think it's, and this blue stuff actually is aconite, and it's a terribly invasive weed. And you can see the state of the churchyard. It's not terribly pretty, frankly. But
lots of blue. But
lots of blue.
That's about the best you can say for it.
Yeah.
After you, let's go and meet Christine.
Dom, who's in the Parish Fair show with us this year, is also a broadcaster on Wandsworth Radio, and he's doing.
Christine just said radio's not so bad, but what she doesn't know is that we're also putting a video on YouTube. So, can we coax you? Can we coax you?
Certainly not. Not in my gardening clothes, no, thank you.
Okay, well, you can remain off screen then.
I will remain off screen.
We'll hear your voice.
Okay.
Interesting. Artistic choice. So, Christine, as Graham explained, I'm in the play and it's about the First World War. It's 100 years on. Are you going to come and see it?
I'm afraid I won't be. I won't be around at that time, otherwise I would have been definitely coming to see it.
Oh, shame. Okay, well, we'll skip over that question then. So, Christine, Graham's showing me the graves. Tell me, I mean, there's a lot of them. Every single one with a poppy is a war grave, is that right?
Yes, the war graves have all got poppies. There's 27 of them, First and Second World War graves spread around the churchyard.
And you come here voluntarily to maintain them?
I come voluntarily to maintain the churchyard, or some of the churchyard. All the war graves have got other volunteers from either the local community or the church. So each one is maintained by a volunteer, a local volunteer.
That's very important, isn't it? Because they could, I suppose, go into a state of ruin and then nobody would know, or it would be forgotten.
They were in a state of ruin some 4 years ago when Graham and other people unearthed a lot of them, because not all of them have got a Commonwealth headstone. Some are in family graves, so they're not easily recognisable. One of the reasons for having the poppies to mark them.
That's a very good idea.
Shall I just say something about that? You'll see, perhaps your camera can pick up on one of these.
One with
that. If I move the cow parsley from it, and that's a classic Commonwealth war grave stone, and you'll see them in northern France all over the place with this, all the same shape, and with the military crest, with a cross. Sometimes a Star of David or something else.
Need a bit of a tidy.
There's one I'd particularly like you to find, Able Seaman King, and if we can find him, because his story is one that. I've got one here, Chris. I know roughly where it is.
I think that's David Reed's
one.
Of
these, I think.
Yeah.
Lead on.
Maybe that one. But be very careful as you turn around here.
Okay.
This one or that one, I think. Yes, that's Sapper Cox, so it's not him.
And do you know if the families of the people who are commemorated here are still around, or
We don't sort of formally know.
Mm.
The evidence suggests that one or two families do tend the war grave. Orchard, who's over there, we can find him a bit later because I know where he is often tended by the family.
right?
Most of these are not. So I'm just looking for my little map. which
And
should-
and this is another Portland stone one.
yeah, another Portland stone, and yeah, that's a classic. And the family is entitled to have a little few words. That one says, "Till the dawn breaks."
I see.
If the family doesn't want anything said, or they're not quite sure whose body it is, that will tend to say "known unto God."
Right, that's a clue
Quite simple.
as
Yeah.
to sort of unknown situation.
Yeah. King is there. We've seen Cox.
Graham's just looking at a map of the whole of the cemetery.
Yeah, that's Peggley, is it? Peggley, right. So, actually, I need to go back up there and across a bit. So let's go and see if I can find.
Is it usual for so many people who've fallen during wars to be in one cemetery, or did this area particularly have a lot of?
No, it's. I have to say, I can't tell you why these people are here.
Okay.
The Commonwealth War Graves Commission was set up in 1917, and it had 4 guiding principles. One of which was there should be no distinction made because of rank or position.
Okay.
And the major implication of that is it meant bodies were buried where they fell. Prior to that, families of officers could often afford to have the bodies brought back home for burial back in the UK. But the War Graves Commission said no, we mustn't allow favouritism based on rank or position. So if you fell abroad, then you were buried and commemorated abroad. Now, some people, of course, will have been injured, brought back to the UK and subsequently died. So they may well have been buried here. Some were killed accidentally, maybe in training, so they may be buried in a local
Oh, I see.
churchyard. But I really have no idea why most of these people were buried here as opposed to... what do we know about Mr. Tubb? Let's have a look in...
Walter Harold Tubb. He was a private, and that's the military number that's written on the stone.
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about Tubb, I think. This is... Oh, well, there you are. That's all I know of him. His service number, he was the 53rd Battalion, the Royal Sussex Regiment. He died on the 11th of October, 1918, so exactly 1 month before cessation. He was 18 years old, and he was the son of Walter and Martha Tubb of 36 Station Road, Merton Abbey.
That's so sad. That's so sad. He just very nearly escaped death if he could have just lived for another month.
Yeah.
But it was very swift. Just people went out there,
Yeah.
caught a bullet, and that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's really shocking when you think about the play. Well, when I try and think about my character, little Roger and his family, because his parents, as you say, are more concerned about the relationship between the father and the son, and they're quite light-hearted about it, and they're jovial, and it's very awkward between them. But of course, the backdrop of that, and perhaps those characters don't know it, or Jay and Barry didn't know it, but really, he's most likely going out not to return.
His life expectancy as a second lieutenant, if you're in an infantry battalion, his life expectancy would be between 14 and 21 days.
That's shocking, isn't it?
No, I don't know whether people knew that at the time. The Little Roger, I think, is probably set in about 1916, so this is the Battle of the Somme. And there were periods of time when there was very little activity going on. I mean, we had this vision in the First War that it was trench warfare all the time. I mean, most of the time it was boredom, nothing much happening, punctuated by these massive offences. So the British Army was involved mainly in the Ypres sector and then helping down in on the Somme. And during those conflicts, at those times, the life expectancy for a subaltern would be a matter of a couple of weeks.
My God.
Let me tell you, if I may, about Abel Seaman King.
Yes.
He was the son of Mrs. Ellen King of 1 Trafalgar Terrace, Abbey Road, Merton. So that's about half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, just behind South Wimbledon Tube Station. Now, he was on the HMS Glatton, which was purchased from the Norwegian Navy at the outbreak of the Great War, and it was fitted out for the Royal Navy. The refit took until September 1918, and on the 11th of September, HMS Glatton sailed for Dover. But there was a low-order explosion in the ship's magazine, which ignited the cordite that was stored in there.
Oh no.
And the commander ordered the magazines to be flooded, but the crew weren't able to flood the ship quickly enough. There was an ammunition ship, HMS Grancher, that was only 150 yards away, and there was fear that if the ammunition ship caught fire, sitting right in the jaws of Dover Harbour, it would wreck the harbour.
Right.
And that was the route through which our forces in northern France were being supplied. So the Vice Admiral at Dover, Vice Admiral Keyes, ordered one of his destroyers to torpedo the Glatton, to sink the ship,
Right.
to put out the fire,
Oh.
to prevent the fire spreading
A
to the
further
ammunition ship.
explosion.
60 men were killed outright on that day. 124 were injured, and of those, 19 died later of their burns. And able Seaman King was one of those 19.
Oh, so it wasn't even an enemy fire situation. It was just
We hear these days of what's called blue on blue fire, which is where you are accidentally shot down by your own side. Perhaps a gun that the trajectory was a bit high and so fell short and landed on your own troops rather than the enemy. But this was an act where the Vice Admiral deliberately decided that he had to sink the ship at a cost of 60 lives to try and save hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of lives elsewhere.
what a terrible, terrible decision. But lots of those are made during conflicts like this.
Absolutely. And there are no happy stories around here, but this does seem to me to be one of the most tragic.
Yes. He died aged.
He was aged 31. I don't think that would have consoled his parents very much.
Not really. No. Still very young, and such a tragic loss. Awful, Graham. It's really sad.
So there you are. That's Able Seaman King. So I have here what I call the Roll of Honour. This is a book I made up a few years ago. It's still pretty much in draft. I don't really have the time I'd like to devote to doing it, but included in it essentially is a photograph of each of the memorials that we have here, with such as we may know about them typed up, and some we know very little and some we know quite a lot. Most of them it's not a huge amount.
If people could see it, maybe they'd know something and they could add something to it. So how can they get access to it? It's still in draft form.
Well, a copy is there in the church. You know, if anyone knows anyone who's they think may be buried here, come and have a look in the back of the church. Not right at the moment. That banging and crashing heard was they were having dormer windows replaced in the church at the minute. That'll take 2 or 3 weeks, if not longer. But you know, at some juncture, come down, have a look. And if you know anything about any of these people, go on the church website, if not already. David Reeves, who is also in 100 Years On,
Yes, he is. Yep.
who's the webmaster for the church, has said that he can put this whole document, which I've got electronically, on the website, so people can go and have a look. If there's any name they recognise, just get in touch and tell us what you know. We'd love to.
I'm sure that would be useful and good for everybody. The Wimbledon has quite a military history, doesn't it? Through Nelson and
Nelson was a regular attender at this church when he was living with Emma Hamilton. The Hamilton estates were just over to over there, a mile or so away there. We have in the front of the church Nelson's pew, the pew it's alleged he sat on when he was here, when he attended here. And outside the church, we might go and look at that a bit later, is what's called Nelson's step, supposedly the stone he stood on in order to mount his horse to drive off. So yes, there's that connection. Captain Isaac Watts, who I think was with Captain Cook. He was Captain Cook's second in command when they discovered Australia. His family is buried here, or he's buried here in the vault just out by the east end of the church. So there's that connection as well. Yeah.
There's a lot of there's a cannon, I think, up at it's up near South Wimbledon Way, which I've seen in one of the parks up there. That would be the subject of another walk, I have a feeling, but there's a lot
St
of...
John's Church.
Yes, I think that's the one.
Yeah. I don't know anything about that, actually. I don't know anything about that. I've seen it there myself as I've gone past, but I've never really...
I assumed it had something to do with one of Nelson's ships.
It may well have done. But there is a road around here called Cannon Hill Lane, and now that was so-called, which slopes up quite a bit, so-called because right at the top of the hill was a cannon emplacement during the Civil War.
Oh, really?
But I can't tell you whether it was a Cavalier or Roundhead one. No. I don't know that much. So
we've been to Cannon Hill Park and Cannon Hill Common in previous walk.
Oh right.
One of the first few that we did.
Yep.
So that was a good walk as well.
Good.
Okay, Graham, lead on. Let's see some more and learn some more about the history of the people here.
Well, who shall we? Shall we go this way only because I can see a way back to a road.
Yes. Okay.
It's like.
Yes. I mean, this is the first walk we've done, Graham, where the terrain has been quite so impassable. Yeah. But it's not too bad. I think we might get a few nettle stings in our shorts.
Yes, we've got short trousers on.
But this is...
Private Smith from the East Surrey Regiment. There are a few East Surrey guys here. March 1918, he died aged 37. Do I know anything about... Private Smith?
They're all so near to the end of in the final year. I mean, the last few ones we've looked at, 1918.
They are, yes. I'm not sure that's always the case.
No.
But there are some, yeah. Smith.
How do you do your research for the graves?
It started essentially from the Commonwealth War Graves website, and there's an amount of information you can get from that, and for many people that's all we have, but some of them we've been able to trace back again mainly through internet searches. Sometimes one or two of our number, Chris Abbott, who you may know, and Chrissy Watson, who's an ex-member of Parish Players, now moved down to St Ives. They've done a lot more research, going to libraries and one thing and another. And but if anyone wants to research anyone, again, pick one off from the website and let us know. No, we know nothing about William John Smith. We know his service number. He was in the 5th Reserve Battalion of the East Surreys. Died in 1918, aged 37. That's all we know about him.
It would be great to know the story, the full story. There's somebody who has a YouTube channel, and she's a mudlark, and sometimes she finds objects that belong to people who fell during times of war, or other kinds of objects too. Yeah. And of course it's hearsay as to whether or not that particular object belonged to that particular individual, but sometimes she gets a story in that way from it. But if anybody did know, that's really what your interest would be, Graham, to try and get some more details and fill in the gaps. It's a lovely sweet smell in the air, isn't there? It's the cow parsley, I presume.
I assume it probably is, yes. Now this is the orchard grave, and say an orchard is I don't know who the family are actually, but there clearly are still family around, because you can see some flowers there. They've been provided by the family. We do try and keep it clear around here a bit, but not infrequently you notice this has been particularly tended. Again, Sapper Raymond Douglas Orchard, the son of Teddy and Laura Orchard of Merton. Don't know very much more about him. He's from the Royal Engineers. Died in 1940, aged 18. So this is a Second World War grave.
One of the younger people to die in the Second World War.
Yeah. Well, legally you weren't allowed in the forces until you're 18, though plenty of occasions when chaps were.
Yes. So maybe there'll be some more information that might be forthcoming, since the family are here and frequenting the cemetery.
I don't know how close the family are. I mean, say he was only 18.
Right.
It says mum and dad.
Ah, yes.
Sargon Art.
Yep.
So that
It may be for them.
May be his parents.
Yeah.
And so there may be, I don't know. Did he have siblings? It's hard to know.
It's often quite tricky to find out because, one, we don't listen to our elders enough and ask them enough questions about our families, generally speaking.
And the older I get, the more I agree with that.
But also added to that is a lot of the people who took part in the Second World War, First World War, for some reason, maybe because keeping a stiff upper lip was so important and not talking about things which were deeply troubling, they just didn't want to speak about it. They didn't want to tell their family about it.
My best mate when I was a young lad, his father was fought in Burma, and he would not talk about that campaign at all. He wouldn't eat rice, various other things he wouldn't do. A very nice Christian man, but he had a fairly unchristian response to the things he'd seen and witnessed in Burma. And indeed, my father-in-law's brother was a prisoner of war in the Far East, and again saw and personally experienced some awful things about which he would very, very, very seldom speak. And one can understand it. What's the benefit of doing so? One might say,
other than to just pass on the information for posterity.
Yeah.
So many of these stories probably will be untold.
Yes.
Fortunately or unfortunately for the families.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually if we just, I don't know whether your camera can pick that. It's a shame that we're so overgrown, because there's this group here and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and if this tree weren't in full leaf, there are another, and the view just from the gate there, maybe on a cold Christmas morning, when all you can see are those red poppies, perhaps with the sun gleaming on it, is quite remarkable. This is the strongest concentration of war graves in the cemetery.
I've been here in the winter time, Graham, and it is a different kind of place. It really is. As you say, it's so grown out with flowers now that it's difficult to make some of the graves out. So come back at maybe at a later time of year. But we're doing the play now, so you have to come now.
Yes, you can come now and later.
The panto hasn't been cast yet, has it?
No, it certainly hasn't been cast. No, I don't know if it's been selected, has it? It's about this time that it's selected and the director appointed and all that. So that may be a process our worthy committee is going through as we speak.
Do you know, I've not done a panto yet. I've been in the Chorus of Disapproval. That was the first play I did with the parish players.
Yeah.
I stepped in at the last minute because there was nobody available to do that one. So I said yes, all right.
Good.
Then this is the second play I've done, and it's one of the summer ones, the ones that take place in May. I haven't done a panto yet, so maybe I'm not trying to angle myself in for the panto, but...
Well, one of the things we like to say about the panto is if you're prepared to come along and rehearse and do your bit, you'll be in it somewhere. There are lead parts to be done, there are smaller parts to be done, and there's always chorus parts. And if you're quite happy to come along and sing and dance and all that, you'll be very welcomed in the chorus.
Oh, we are the chorus. We hope you like the show. We know you're rooting for us, but now it's time to go.
You've got the part.
Auditioned. Well, this is very, very thick, isn't it? The Oh, I'm worried about getting stung.
No, this won't sting you.
No.
It's called aconite. It's a very invasive weed, and it is. We just can't control.
It's not like Japanese knotweed, is it?
It's not as dangerous as that, but it's as hard to get rid
You
of.
might need a machete.
Yeah, a flamethrower. More like.
Yes.
There's an interesting grave here. It's Lancaster. Well, actually, it's just over here.
Okay. Under the trees?
Yeah, under the trees. It's a very interesting design. It's a family grave, so not an official war grave type. They used many years ago to always send choir boys out on Remembrance Sunday to put a poppy on all of these graves. But
Oh.
it's become frankly too dangerous. Now, wait a minute.
Yes.
I thought Lancaster was just there. Wait here a moment. Let me just...
Okay. We'll just wait for Graham here. Yes, we've been walking over the great... Did we see the memorial at the front of the church?
Not yet.
No, that's... Are we going to wait for that? And
We'll go to that.
Graham's having a search for it. Oh,
Do you remember where Lancaster is?
Yeah, it's that one over there. Not that one.
I've come too far this way, yeah.
it's quite easy to get lost here, isn't it?
It's a little old churchyard, but actually it's quite a large church.
That's Christine calling out in the background.
Yeah, I've got him. Yeah, thank you. He's on the wrong side of the road.
We weren't going to do... The original podcast that I had lined up for this Sunday was with Chris the Guard, but changed to the schedule because we wanted to do... I wanted to do a show just about this churchyard and the parish players because it was such an appropriate time with the show coming up. So that's on pause for a minute. I'm sure Chris won't mind.
No, I'm sure she won't.
Oh no, Chris the Guard. It's a different Chris. So we've managed to get our way to the one you wanted.
Yeah.
Tell me.
This is Sydney Lancaster. As you see, it's not a standard war grave.
No, this is not one of the Commonwealth ones.
No.
This is a much older one, and it's more. It's worn and greened and sort of.
It's a family grave. Well, it won't. It's probably not Portland stone. Well, I've no idea what stone it is, but it's not the Portland stone. But what do we know about Signalman Lancaster, who's in the 2nd Armoured Division of the Signals, in the Royal Corps of Signals, died in 1941. His parents lived in Dorking. And he is buried here with their other son, I think. Is in loving memory of our dear son, Sydney Lancaster, aged 23, and Herbert. And I'm just going to get in there and see.
It's the last
Herbert
part
was
of the
aged
day.
18.
Aged 18. Gosh. I'll try and get that on the camera, but maybe we could include some pictures from your publication.
Yes, I mean I can send you this electronically, Don, which I'll do this afternoon if you like.
Okay. Yes.
So you've got it
we
all
can definitely include that.
Do what you will with it.
Marvellous. But I mean, again, there's not much known about Signalman Lancaster.
No, you can probably look up Second World War. We probably stand a better chance if you look up his service number. You may be able to find some information. But sometimes you can't.
This is a family one, so there's a lot more personal choice in the way that the decoration of the stone has been done.
Entirely as you will. I mean, what the War Graves Commission established in 1917 were 4 essential principles, which were that each of the dead should be commemorated by name on the headstone or their memorial. The headstones and memorial should be permanent, so we didn't want anything wooden that was going to rot after.
Right.
The headstone should be uniform, so apart from the inscription on it, again, no distinction, so that people with money couldn't buy a bigger, better one
Sure.
than the people who didn't, and no distinction made on account of military or civil rank, race or creed. So there is a sameness to all the official ones, but obviously if you're putting your fallen relative in a family grave, then it goes in the grave that...
Yes, I understand now, because I was beginning to think about a grave I saw that was in the cemetery, and it was for somebody who'd fallen in the war. I think it was the Second World War. It was near to where Rudyard Kipling used to live in Sussex.
Yes.
Can't remember it just at the minute what it's called, but it was a very big sort of tomb, you know.
Yes.
It was quite elaborate.
Yes.
But of course that was a family one.
Yeah.
So that different
Rudyard
rules.
Kipling, of course, was involved with the War Graves Commission because he was consulted about the words to be used on the various inscriptions. I mean, the other guys involved here, Sir Edward Lutyens, very well-known architect, designed most of New Delhi, and Sir Reginald Bloomfield and Sir Herbert Baker. Those three were the great architects of the day, and they were all involved in designing not just the headstone, but if you go to northern France and Belgium, to Flanders, where you'll see loads of small cemeteries, and some huge ones, and they have some similarities there because these three guys essentially laid down the designs that were to be used. Many of them have a thing called the Sword of Honour, which was Bloomfield designed, which is laid into the cross. I mean, here is a cross, and some of them have what looks like a sword sort of laid into that, and that's a sort of standard design. So Lutyens, Bloomfield, and Baker were the architects, but Rudyard Kipling was the guy they consulted in terms of what little inscriptions they might.
You know, I went to see the National Trust property. Again, I can't recall because it's suddenly come up in conversation. I'll try and just find out later. But I found out that Rudyard Kipling actually lost his son at the First World War.
There's a play called My Boy Jack. It was tragic because Kipling, yes, who was well connected to the king and others, but his son Jack had very, very bad eyes and was rejected by the Army Board. But Kipling pulled strings to get him included, and he went out to France and was killed, I think, within about 14 or 15 days of arrival.
Oh my God.
If you get a chance, it's a wonderful film called My Boy Jack, starring David Haig as Kipling, well worth looking at, and a tragic story. But, that's the fortunes of war.
At the time, it was... dishonourable not to serve. You'd be frowned upon. You'd be a coward, regarded really as a coward.
As your mother's character in your play says words to the effect of, if I'd had 12 sons, I would not have any of them stay behind. And that wasn't because she didn't love you or little Roger and your mates, but that was the prevailing
honour dictated
of the
that
day.
people had to make the sacrifices necessary, do the duty.
Yeah.
But perhaps they didn't quite know how unlikely it would be that you'd be coming back alive. But thanks, Graham. That's shall we lead on?
To the War Memorial and just have a...
Let's do that.
I think we might do best actually to retrace our steps.
Okay, retracing the steps. I'm not going to map this one. Usually with our walks we have a little map that people can follow, but I think it's fitting if somebody came to the cemetery just to look at the ones that take their eye and to read the stories in their own way, in their own time.
Yep.
It's too small of a space really for us to can be concerned about the precise order we did it in, but you can look out for some of the ones that we saw if you do follow in our tracks.
And the other thing I'd recommend to any of your listeners and readers, if they've not been to Ypres and to the Menin Gate and the ceremony there, people may not know that every day of the year, every single day, the main road into Ypres is closed, and a brief ceremony lasts about 15 minutes, takes place under the Menin Gate, sounding the last post, reading the exhortation, that sort of thing. And if you've never been, it's well worth a trip. Very moving experience. been there several times myself. Twice we've sung it, taken a choir over, and then there's often just a little bit of choral music. And last time actually I was privileged enough to read the exhortation, "They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old."
Oh, really? Oh.
Which, many of you will know. And if you don't know, come and see 100 Years On, because it's featured in that.
It is. I've never been to Ypres to see that, so that's one recommendation I must follow up on.
Yeah.
We've just passed by the Nelson Steps.
Yes.
And the Priory Arch as well, which back there.
Yes.
We've looked at that in a previous walk when we did the Cannon Hill Common one, I think.
Yeah.
So
that was moved over from Merton Abbey.
it's really steeped in history, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wimbledon.
Thomas à Becket studied at Merton Abbey. So,
Wow.
right, this is the War Memorial. So which way have we got to turn for you to see?
I can, if I push the camera down like this, there you are. You see two silhouetted figures. Rather an artistic shot, actually, Graham.
Very good. Very good.
I'm proud of that.
What can we tell you about this? Not very much. It's not in the greatest state of repair. The base particularly is very badly eroded.
I
but
can't read that really.
it is very difficult to read. I mean, there are little bits you can make out: 1939 to 45, 14 to 18. It's in a sort of pseudo-Gothic script, which, even if it were clear, would make it very difficult to read. But the passage of time, we've had it looked at a few times and tried to clean it, but there really is not much you can do.
No?
The only thing really would be to remove it and replace it with Portland stone.
Right.
But goodness only knows how much.
The
that would be.
top part is much cleaner, much lighter, much brighter.
Yep.
And there's a figure at the top, like an angel, I think.
Yeah.
One of her hands is missing. Is that right? It's an angel. It's right. She's right at the top. Or I don't think angels have a sex. So
No, I think you're very right.
there's still some poppies. There's a reef of poppies that have been left to the side. And I suppose people come here on November the 11th. And
It's on Remembrance Sunday rather than the 11th these days. And yes, there is. We have a service in church, and we observe the 2-minute silence in church, and have last post and reveille. But then we process out and form up right on this corner, and some poppies are laid both from the local community and the Rutledge School. Could Rutledge have a strong connection with the church? If for no other reason than Sir William Rutledge is buried just along there. We can have a look at that in a moment. And they have a cadet force there, so they come and
in the play, people will learn that quite a few of the pupils from the Rutledge School, quite a few boys were killed in the First World War.
There were 2 of them who won VCs, which are spoken of, and at least one family, yes, who had 4 sons, and 3 of them died in the last 3 months of 1917. And at Rutledge School, and I'm a member. I didn't go to Rutledge School actually, but I'm an honorary member of the old boys there, and there are some members' boards in there with far too many names on them.
Far too many, yes. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, Graham. Shall we go and have a look at the Rutledge Memorial?
Yep.
There's a poster there for the play, parish players. There's always, this is always the spot where the parish players advertise their latest play, and just going by here, you can see the poster for it there. That will be taken down, won't it? Because we after the play finishes, 17th, 18th, 19th, the poster comes straight down, doesn't it? And then we go away and we have a little holiday, and then we come back around about the autumn time for preparations for the panto.
The church is used for various other concerts. They're often concerts. It's got a relatively new organ, which is held to be a very good organ now. So there are concerts of one sort or another there. So they'll all be advertised.
Yeah.
Sorry, we've gone right.
We've gone past it. There's a jumble sale as well that takes place, which is
famous Scouts jumble sale. Which, when my son was a scout there, goodness gracious, what was that, 35 years ago, was making sort of 2,000 or 3,000.
I didn't know you had a son.
Yeah, he lives in Berlin.
Oh, I see.
2 daughters in the play. And
yes, that's right. Right, so
so now this is the grave of William Rutledge, and there's an inscription there which
Here lies interred the body of M. William Rutlish, embroiderer to King Charles II, born in this parish, being eminent both for his piety and charity to the poor of the parish in his lifetime, and at his death did bequeath several tenements in this parish to the value of 400 for the putting out poor children born in the parish. I'm sorry, the script is not standard, is it? It's an old-fashioned child. Children born in this parish, apprentice. He departed this life on the 4th of March, 1687, 82 years of age. And also here lieth Mary, the wife of the said William Rutlish.
And I believe from the funds, what's known as the Rutlish Foundation, was used essentially to fund the school that is now Rutlish School. It started its life just on the other side of the level crossing in what, surprisingly, is called Rutlish Road.
Right.
And because it was a school based on that foundation for quite some time, Rutlish maintained a level of independence from the local authority. So, for example, when other schools were made into three-tier, Rutlish said it wouldn't go along with that. When other schools lost their sixth forms, Rutlish insisted they kept theirs. I'm not quite sure what the governance arrangement is right now, but it's...
These things do change, don't they?
They do. So that's William Rutlish.
Wimbledon seems to be two great men of Wimbledon. There was William Rutlish and John Innes. Are there any other great benefactors?
Yes. Thornton, Richard Thornton.
Chocolates?
No. What do I know about Richard? I don't know very much about Richard Thornton at all, other than my friend Bruce Robertson is secretary to their trustees. Again, a great beneficiary of the parish. The church itself, which is we've just celebrated its 900th year, have we? Yeah, 900th year since its foundation.
Gosh.
Initially was just the nave, but there are now two aisles, north and south aisle, and Thornton certainly paid for one of them in 1840, 50, 60, that sort of time. And the foundation still exists. I have no idea how much money there still is in it and what it does with it, nor how he made his money, frankly. I'm sure it's from quite appropriate.
Yes, I'm not suggesting otherwise, but it's got lost again, this fact. Let's have a look at the church.
Yeah, I don't know whether we can get in because it's a bit of a building site.
They can see the William Rutlish Memorial there in the background. We're walking away from it. We might not be able to go into the church today. I'll try and get the steps in the background. It's a lovely, quiet place.
It's a village in the middle of a town, really.
Yeah. We need places like this in London. Places where you can get away. Croydon's nearby, isn't it? And that's quite a busy, hustly-bustly place.
Yes.
Even Wimbledon Village itself, not Wimbledon Village, but up by Wimbledon train station,
Wimbledon town centre,
can get very busy as well.
Yeah.
And perhaps you can forget how wonderful it is. Here's the Priory Arch.
Yes.
We're very, very lucky to have this, and to live close to everything that's in London.
Yeah.
But at the same time, on a Sunday, you can come here and have tranquility.
And go here and have a look at the.
Oh, can we go through the arch? Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I've never been through this part.
We go through.
Now, the church hall where we do our productions, that's dates from the 1970s, doesn't it? It's about
1964.
Older than me. That's about a lot older than me. Yeah, 10, 11 years.
You may just be able to see the old vicarage. Now, when I first started being involved here, the whole of this house was the vicarage. An 8-bedroomed. When might it have been built? Post-Georgian, I suspect.
So it's not quite as old as the church itself.
Not quite. And the vicar then was a wonderful character called, his Christian names were Squire Heaton, and his surname was Heaton Renshaw, hyphenated. So his full name was Squire Heaton Renshaw.
Great name.
wonderful old character, Bean Mars from Cambridge, a music scholar, and he had, I think, 5 daughters before he eventually had the son. And
he was trying for a son.
So they had this 8-bedroom,
They'd have
beautiful.
needed it, wouldn't they? Lots of people.
Many years ago, that end of the house was sort of separated off and sold off as a 3-bedroom property, but it's still left as a 5-bedroom property, and it's a wonderful house, a lovely garden, and present vicar is very entertaining in it. He
Does he live there all by himself?
Yeah, he and his partner Roger but they're not married. But they are in civil partnership.
But there's still quite a lot of space just for the two of them.
Yeah. The previous incumbent had a couple of daughters. The next incumbent, we know not.
Yeah, who knows?
This doesn't exist for a kind of a 2 to 5 year scheme. It's a 2,000-year-old operation.
That's right. Yeah. It happens when it happens.
The church hall just down here.
Shall we go down there?
Yeah.
Is it open to the public?
Not really to the
Not
public.
really.
I mean, it probably is open.
I know that Sheila, who sometimes does these walks with us on Walking Wandsworth, she hasn't been on one for a while. She does her fitness classes here.
Sheila who?
Sheila Connolly.
Right, no. So not a Sheila I know. Yes, there are. I mean, the hall is in use almost all the time. Mornings, afternoons, and evenings. It's fairly well booked out. So to that extent, it's open, but there are no sort of public areas there. There isn't a cafe or anything like that people can come to. But
some of the people in the play are... Sorry, this is slightly off the topic of the hall, but it just occurred to me to mention some of the people in the play do remember people in the First World War, had relatives in the First World War, so there's a poignance there for them.
Oh, I'm sure. And I know my daughters are very keen because they remember their grandfather who fought in the Second War. This is what I was just going to show you.
It says, this plaque commemorating the building of this hall was unveiled on the 3rd of October 1964 by Mrs. S.H. Heaton Renshaw, on behalf of all those whose generous donations made this building possible. The hall is built on a site presented to the parish by a former vicar, Canon J.E. Jagger,
Of whom we have heard.
and replaces the old church hall, which stood from 1916 to 1964 on the present car park. Gosh. So that lasted for a while, the last one.
Yep, and I remember that. We'll go and have a look at that in a moment. I mean, I can remember standing in this when it was a building site in what is now the kitchen, looking out
Oh, right.
on it. Mrs. Heaton Renshaw was very well connected. She was a daughter of, I think, the Guinness family or
Really?
some such.
Wow.
And she very generously offered to match fund all the fundraising for the hall. So
if
for every pound that was raised, she would put £1 in. I've no idea how much it cost.
Let's have a little look from this
The
way.
War was £350 in 1921.
1921.
I suspect this was quite a lot more.
Yeah, sure.
But Mrs. Heaton Renshaw, Daphne, paid for half of it.
We have a lot to thank Guinness for in that case.
Don't quote me on Guinness. Actually, something tells me the metal box company was involved. They may
Okay.
be part of the same dynasty, but she was from a very wealthy
Manufacturing family.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Just because it's Guinness doesn't necessarily... That's just me. My wishful thinking. We're going down to the car park, and this is where it enters onto the glebe fields, which is where does the jumble sale happen on the glebe fields? No, it happens in the church hall?
It's inside, but we'll be out here.
Yes.
Out as well.
Oh,
That's the
yes.
scout hut where...
They're getting ready. It's this weekend, isn't
It's
it?
on Saturday.
Saturday.
Which is why we need to be careful with our set. On a previous occasion, many years ago, we were doing, I can't remember what it was an Agatha Christie type whodunit with a standard box set and furniture. And I had a bureau that was going to be part of the props, and we left it on the stage and the scouts sold it. Fortunately, they could remember who bought it because they delivered it to them. So we had to go round, cap in hand and cash in hand, and say, "Sorry, can we have a euro?"
Oh dear.
So people are beginning to.
Yeah, I can see there's some donations.
And it's a massive operation.
I remember we tried to get a brush, an ivory hairbrush.
Right.
And ivory, of course, lots of
You're not
that's
allowed to do that.
yeah. Well, we thought maybe we'd be able to sell it, but you can't sell it on eBay.
No.
So I think in the end it got donated. But once the elephant has been killed, it is a beautiful object.
Absolutely.
It's there to be enjoyed. There's nothing you can do really. No. I think it's slightly sacrilegious to crush everything up, but that's just my view.
Yeah. Yes, I understand that entirely. Yeah. So this is where the old hall stood. And where the first pantomimes, well, presumably the first 7 or 8 pantomimes were performed in the old hall.
We're not going to find a king from ancient times buried under the car park, are we?
Not so far as I'm aware. Do you want to walk through the glebe back to the...
Oh, that would be lovely, yes. We love to get a bit of green in our walks. We've had plenty on this one. Look at this old style. It's sort of...
What they call a kissing gate.
A kissing gate, that's it. So you go through, Graham, I'll try and get a video of you doing it. It's a little sort of semicircular rounded bit which you walk into, as I am doing now, and then the gate closes this way and you can walk through. And maybe is that just do you think there were animals grazing along here at some point?
That's a relatively modern,
okay.
I mean in the last 40 years.
I've never seen one on a church before. It's something like you'd see them a lot in the National Trust public walkways.
Yeah.
And you have a moment where you try and figure it out, and as soon as you figure it out and realise how to open and close it and lock it properly, you say, yes, I can do it, I can be a farmer too, I'm part of the countryside.
This is where we hold the church fairs generally here, and there are gates there through. There's gates, they're locked at the moment, you could open those so you got access through to the back of the hall. So our summer fair, which unfortunately we're not having this year, tends to be out here.
That's a shame. Why is that?
We couldn't find anyone who was able to sort of organise it and drive it forward. So,
well, I've never been to the summer fair, and now I feel that I'm missing out.
Maybe next year. Maybe next year. Come to the Christmas one. We have one at Christmas as well.
Okay.
So there are essentially what we regard as 3 glebe fields here. That one...
it's lovely. Can anybody just come in and sit down and have a picnic?
It is glebe land, so it legally belongs to the church, to the diocese, I think, rather than the parish. But we're very welcome, very happy for people to use it. A lot of dog walkers.
Yes, there is actually somebody mowing the grass.
David Cowie, who lives in one of these houses here.
Now
an old friend of ours.
This mower is something. Oh, I'd love to have one of those. I just don't have the lawn big enough to use it on.
Well, David lives in that house there, and he's long been sort of in charge of looking after the glebe field. So he and a little group of people try and keep it in reasonable nick.
Oh, so he's a volunteer?
Oh, yes.
Thank goodness for people who do have this care for the community and love it enough to go out there and do something wonderful. It must take a long time to
yeah, I mean, I've done my stint on that, not that particular one, on a previous mower. It's great fun, as you say, just drive around there, but it takes an hour or so to cut the field.
It leaves lovely stripes, doesn't it? I've never been here on a day when the grass has been mown. And it's got that lovely fresh grass mown smell in the air.
And then this is just behind the vicarage. You can see the vicarage.
Oh yeah.
There. We've come.
I can't be sure if I can get it on the camera, but yes, I see. We're right at the back of the vicarage we looked at. Yes.
More or less into the vicar's garden. We won't be too intrusive, but just so you can get a...
We're lucky on the weather. This is one of the good ones. We've had a nice long streak of 3 or 4 days over the bank holiday. Really nice weather. It's been gorgeous.
And it's sustained. I'm due to be going to the Oval on Friday, and it'll be much colder then.
Oh,
I'll probably see David at the Oval as well.
Okay, is that a 2020?
No, county game. County game. This is that's the vicarage garden. lovely garden.
It's lovely, isn't it? Who lives in a house like this? Yes. It's a lovely garden. Beautiful.
A few years ago we did to start fundraising for the new organ we needed to raise £500,000.
We're just having a stopover.
Playing with your new toy, are you, David?
Well, this one.
Dom,
Very old, 10 years old.
Dom is a reporter from Radio Wandsworth who's just having a look round our graveyard.
I see. And what have you been seeing there today?
Lots of First World War and Second World War graves. Yes, put the engine in idle, we can hear each other a bit more, but it's still very noisy. It's a lovely machine, isn't it? Do you enjoy riding it?
Well, it's something I've been doing for 30 years, so it's sort of, you get used to it.
What's this tree, David? That's new, isn't it?
It's James I mulberry, black mulberry, from the scion of the original tree that was planted in the Chelsea Physic Garden in 1605.
Wow.
There you are. I didn't know anything about that.
Dean's got one, we've got one. There's one in the ruts, actually.
We're slowly losing you.
We will.
Thank you very
keep up
much.
the good work.
Thank you for mowing it for us and
Not
keeping
at
it
all.
looking great.
Trying to keep it as nice as possible for everybody.
Thank you.
See you later, mate.
Going
See you on Friday. The Oval.
at the Oval. Oh, you can't do it? It's a great life people lead, isn't it, around these parts? So this is the tree. It's a mulberry. I'll try and adjust my camera. There we are. Oh yes, there we are. That's something for people to find. Maybe I'll leave a prize there.
Yeah.
If anybody comes by, they can try and find the prize, and it'll be yours to take and keep. Just let me know. Send me a tweet at Walking Pod, which is the Twitter. For everybody has Twitter. Do you have Twitter? No. Would you say that the parish players is what sort of age group?
Too old now. Too old. There are. When I was about 18ish when I joined, I was that sort of age, and at one stage we could have a chorus of 15 or 20 who were to your left.
Someone coming on a bicycle.
Younger than that. Oh.
It's
You all right?
okay. It's getting to the point where people are leaving school. I mean,
Yeah,
the
yes.
time of day.
Yes.
Not when they're leaving, generally
To go home,
speaking. They're leaving to go home.
But I suspect, Dom, you are the youngest person.
So that's a long time since that's happened. They have to ID me when I go in through the front door.
By some manner. We have a rule in parish players that says you can't be in it until the school year in which you become 13. And I think we need to rethink that because it'd be good to get,
It's not excluding members, is it? At the moment. Graham, would you believe we've now come nearly to the end of our hour?
yeah, well, it's just as well because I have another appointment in about 5 minutes, so the timing is brilliant.
What a wonderful afternoon walk. Thank you so much,
You're
Graham.
welcome. We could have, if we wanted to, we could have gone on for about another hour. with,
Yeah, there's a lot to
things
see.
that come into my mind.
And it's very nice to be here as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Graham, I shall see you again on Sunday when we'll have a rehearsal.
Shall indeed.
And then on Tuesday we'll have a dress rehearsal.
I know, you'll see me on Sunday and on Monday.
And
I
on
think,
Monday as well.
and
Oh,
on Tuesday and
we're-
on Wednesday.
things are hotting up.
And on Thursday and on Friday.
And on Friday
Saturday.
and on Saturday, when hopefully
On Sunday
we'll
you
be
can have
seeing
the day
you.
off.
Oh, thanks very much. Well, that'll be Walking Wandsworth.
Well, yes. Well,
Thanks very much,
let's go out this way and
Graham. It's been a real joy.
pleasure.
Thank you. Oh, look, and
Hi,
here,
John.
here's John Hayward. Hello. Well, we're just at the end of our walk. We are doing for Wandsworth Radio, and this is going to be on YouTube as well. We've been looking at your house and just got a glimpse of the back garden. Nothing too intrusive, don't worry. We won't have hordes of people coming in. We looked at the glebe fields at the back and looking at the war graves in the cemetery because of the connection to 100 years on.
The Dom's in the show.
Yeah.
So
There as well. We look forward to the Parish Players production.
absolutely.
Thank you very much.
So there we are. All right,
Gentlemen, bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.